The United States is heading into a very dark place, a place for which we all should be afraid. It is heading towards the decline of democracy. It's being faced with an attack on free speech. There will come a time when in the United States you'll find it difficult to be able to say anything that you may wish to say against Donald Trump or the administration. Any language that you use that criticises the Trump administration will be seen as a contravention of a set of unspecified rules, which means that whoever makes those comments will find themselves censored and possibly, as is the case with Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert, are likely to lose their positions. This is a moment in which we all need to be reflecting, because what it does indicate to all of us is that the United States is heading more and more towards an authoritarian regime. There are some people that will argue, in fact, that they're already there, that these steps that the FCC has taken recently are really about manipulating free press so that people will not be able to say what they need to say and make the reports they need to report. We've also discovered this through the many lawsuits that Trump has issued against the New York Times and other newspapers and the ABC, and that he has, as a result of these threats, enhanced himself in terms of the millions of dollars that he's been paid. So what does this mean? Where are they going? And is there something that we can do about it? Podcasts like my own I've established so that we can have these conversations, so that we can become aware of what's happening around us, and that there can be voices such as mine and others who will make a stand, who will build our communities so that our communities can make a stand against those that are pushing against us. So where does this take the United States? It won't end at Jimmy Kimmel. It will continue. There'll be Phelan, there will be other comedians who will also be suffering, as has Jimmy Kimmel. I don't think we should necessarily feel sorry for these people in terms of the fact that they're millionaires in their own right. Losing their jobs is something that they will bear, and they will move on, obviously, to greener pastures, perhaps, to other networks who aren't as constrained as what CBS and ABC are. And even though we can look at this and say, well, this is a financial decision, it is clearly an attack on free speech, and that it is plain and obvious. Everyone can see the way Trump has responded around this, that he preempted it, that the FCC chairman talked about it and threatened the ABC in relation to a merger that was happening between two major organisations, two affiliates. And the affiliates have decided that they're going to cancel Jimmy Kimmel simply because they needed to increase the percentage of stations in the country from 30 to 80, which would give them some control over the media in the United States to the tune of around 89%. So, is this going to get worse? Yes, it is. And they will come out after anyone who has a contradictory view of their policies. The reality is that Donald Trump is thin-skinned, that he can't take criticism, that he will punish anybody who criticises him. And we saw that in relation to a question that John Lyon asked him the other day about the amount of money that he's earned from the presidency. And he took exception to that, because the reality is that you can no longer ask Donald Trump or anyone in the administration some hard questions. They have to be soft, and you have to be compliant, and you have to celebrate the dear leader, because he is the man who wishes to be king. And what does this eventually mean for the US? Can you imagine this for a moment? say they find a way in which to silence all of their critics, and that people will be fearful of making statements that contradict Donald Trump for fear of them losing their jobs and the organisations losing their licence. Now, it's fair to say at this particular point that the FCC hasn't got the ability and probably will not remove people's licences. And even if they did, my understanding is that they would find that those matters would find their way to court, and that the courts are likely to rule in favour of the organisations. So that is unlikely, but there are other ways by which they can get around this, and particularly in relation to mergers and the power that the FCC has in agreeing to those mergers. So this is an issue which is going to accelerate over time, because Trump isn't now going to sit back and think, oh, well, it's all done and dusted now because I got rid of Jimmy Kimmel. In fact, the opposite is likely to be true. He's likely to recognise that he now has the power and authority through some of these mergers, whether it be Disney or whether it be Nexstar or whatever it is that's merging, that they therefore have the power to be able to manipulate events so that they can get their version of events before the public, so that organisations will cancel those people that speak out against them. So what would happen if in the US they found a way to be able to control all conversations, the internet and so forth, if they were able to enact the same sort of procedures that they do in Russia and China, where they can cut the influence of the internet? People like me on YouTube would not get viewings overseas, that the algorithm would be directed to only right-wing media. I think that this, even though it is scary, it is possible that this may happen. That eventually they will find more and more ways to manipulate tech companies so that tech companies will abide by the rules set by the Trump administration. So what would it mean that as the United States embarks on this program, what does that mean to us? What does it mean in terms of free speech? Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert is just the beginning. Things are going to get worse, much worse. And are we prepared for it when it happens? That is the question we need to be asking ourselves. Because what happens in the most powerful country on this earth is likely to affect us all. If the United States goes down that path, and they are likely to find ways in which to manipulate the total system, the total flow of information, and that only propaganda proposed by them, the administration, is all that people see, how will people respond to that? We have the history around this, and I won't talk about it in great detail, but certainly in the 1930s, the German people acquiesced to Nazi Germany, to Hitler, because they realised that at that particular point in time, the country was doing better than it had ever done before. They ignored the fact that people with Jewish names were disappearing. And in the United States, we see this happening already, where people of Latino backgrounds or that were not white suddenly are being erased from the streets. It's a dystopian outlook, but it is almost upon us. It's like we're looking out across the ocean and we can see the tsunami hitting us. It's on its way, and we need to be prepared for it. And we need voices like mine and anybody else that's progressive talking out against what is the pending doom. So the question here for me is the United States likely to become more and more isolationist as as Trump becomes less and less popular, and I believe his popularity rating is now down to 37%. When it reaches 33%, all that he will have behind him are the rusted-on MAGA people. And yet, most of us, or most of the people in the United States, will find it difficult to fight back. They'll probably be sort of encased in an environment which really is isolated from the rest of the world anyway. They have very little knowledge or understanding as to what happens in the rest of the world, and they don't really care. As long as they're still able to buy food and drive the cars they want and live in the homes they would like, then they will be fine. And as long as the wealthy are still wealthy and the poor are still poor, things will remain the same and no one will really care. But around them will be an eroding of speech, of a sense of rationality. There'll be a lack of compassion and empathy for others. That will all be gone. And while they're doing that, the rest of the world will be thinking, we won't have much to do with you guys anymore. Bugger you. We're going to move on and we're going to develop something within the rest of the world that you can no longer be a party to. That it reminds me a little bit of what North Korea have done. They have been out. You see maps of in the night time of North Korea, and there are very few lights on. I'm not suggesting that it will get to that point in the United States, but it's kind of similar. There will come a time when the United States will be so isolated from the rest of the world. In a metaphorical sense, the lights will be turned out. That the world will reject them. The world will stop giving Trump the accolades that he got recently in the UK. That there will be people, more and more people, that will speak out against him. There'll be more politicians that will reject whatever it is that the administration is presenting. And Australia will have to, at some point, make a decision about what sort of government it wants to be and what sort of rejection of the United States it wants to implement. And those days are coming, believe me. They're almost upon us. We need to find a way to be able to talk up to and to confront what's happening in the US. Not because, I guess, we need to be too concerned about the American people, but there's 380 million of them or so. And they're going to suffer from what the presidency is doing. I find it sad that there seems to be so little pushback. And I find it sad to watch segments on Sky News that continually support what Trump is doing, that they fail to be able to see that the man is heading towards an autocracy, if not already there. And that we need to sit back and watch a neighbour and what has been in the past a friend be diminished in the way that they are. It saddens me to think that this is the way the world is going. But there needs to be some pushback. And one of the questions I've been asking myself is, could this happen in Australia? At the moment, there are no indications that it will, that the Liberal Party hasn't moved that far to the right, even though there are indicators that it would like to, but they won't be in power for a long, long time. So we don't have to fear that. What we do need to fear is how that relationship with the United States is likely to sour from this point on. Albanese is meeting with Trump next week at the United Nations in New York. What will that conversation be like? And will Albanese have the courage to be able to stand up to Trump when Trump suggests that people like John Lyons be sacked from the ABC for asking him a question that he didn't like? That is hypocrisy. And if Albo fails to do that, then the country is in trouble. Because at some point we need to ensure that our sovereignty is maintained and that the United States is on notice that if their authoritarian behaviour continues, they will no longer be a friend of this country. So what are we to do? It worries me greatly. If you have any suggestions, could you please put them in the comment section below? Let me know what you think. Are we likely to head towards an autocracy or not? Thanks everybody for being with me.